Hello and welcome to the Magic of Boots 49th edition. This is Ronnie. I have a special guest with me, Thomas Nef. Thomas, welcome to the show. Very, very glad to
Hey,
have you.
thank you.
So, just
Thank you, Ronnie. Appreciate it. Oh,
yeah, just to give a little bit of a brief introduction about you, those people who might not know you. I'll give you a little bit of introduction slot there.
yeah. Canadian soccer journalist. Been covering it for 3 years. Covered MLS, Canada soccer in the World Cup qualifiers, as well as CPL, Canadian Championship. Worked in radio, uh, play-by-play announcing, commentating, writing, TV. Uh, Done a bit of everything. Former intern at One Soccer. Worked for Latin American outlets. Covered university soccer. Yeah, really done a bit of everything in the industry. That's kind of my thing. I'm from actually born in Chile, but raised in Canada. So that's kind of a little bit about me.
Well, thank you very much again, Thomas. I'm actually very very pleased to have you because you are someone that I follow that you are working in the grassroots level of Canadian soccer. I should say football. That's what most people say, but either way, it's fine. Uh, so just to have you here is that Canada, especially in this particular qualifying in for the World Cup, was top of the CONCACAF. I mean, uh, it was a lot of people's raised the eyebrows who were not really following Canadian development. So, just a quick question for you. I mean, was Canada waiting for you to enter into the industry and then do something, or is it a continuous effort and a lot of hard work on the grassroots level
For personally, or you say the Canadian team?
for the uh, Canadian development in the recent form they have gained, topping on the CONCACAF region? How do you see that has happened over the years?
Well, it's been. I think there's two cycles to this. I'd even argue there's three. Everything, like you say, there's that special saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, and that is exactly true. I would say that this whole rebuild started way back. Even people begin to understand the Benito Floro era, and why do I bring it back all the way back to the dark years? Because he actually made guys like Maxime Crepeau, Sam Adekube. He made them debut. He gave also first call ups to other players. Milan Borjan was still in the squad then, and Jonathan Osorio, even though he didn't get along with the coach. And then obviously comes Octavio Zambrano, who
Mhm.
makes guys like Mark Anthony Kaye debut, Alfonso Davies, and slowly but surely the up and coming young players are starting to rise and to really replace the older players. You see guys like Adam Straith, Marcel De Jong, Nick Ledgerwood. They're starting to retire. David Edgar as well. Pretty much just named the entire back line in 2018, but they're starting to retire, and slowly but surely newer players are coming through. And then comes where that 2017 qualifying cycle, 2017 Gold Cup, where
Mhm.
Canada finally, for the first time in 8 years, gets to a quarterfinal at the Gold Cup with Octavio Zambrano, and then he identifies, like I say, Davies, Kaye, and whatnot. And from that group on, if you look at that summer, players like Lucas Cavallini moved from Uruguay to Mexico. Sam Piet was playing in a third division club in Spain. He moves to what used to be called the Montreal Impact. Davies is still playing in the MLS, and you really start to see, kind of changes. Milan Borjan was playing, I believe, at the time in Bulgaria, Romania, and then he finally makes the move to his current club, which is now playing Champions League, biggest club in Serbia. So you start to see kind of a movement in that 2017, and then once Zambrano is fired, then Herdman takes over, and I think he really made that change completely new. Because yes, Herdman had a lot of players to work with, such as Hoylett, Borjan and whatnot. But he identified a lot of new players as well, such as Liam Miller. He gave Jonathan David's first cap as well. So he continued the work that guys like Benito Floro and Octavio Zambrano were already doing it. But I think that the difference was that he even did it with kind of a not a clean slate because there are some moving pieces, but he did it in a time where Canada um, was in a need of new players. I mean, if you look at that 2018 friendly against New Zealand, the first ever match under John Herdman, Liam Miller was not a professional by then. Guys like Ulster Johnston hadn't even played professional yet. Kamal Miller was still very, very, wet between the ears. Was a young player. No one really knew him. I think it was David Witherspoon's first cap. So the team was still not quite set in stone. And then I think when it really happened was obviously the mistake that John Herdman they lost to Haiti in
Mm-hmm.
2019. That was the first real big lesson. But I think the first time where people really thought something was there was, okay, can they beat Suriname? Can they take back payback on Haiti and get to the Hex? And when they got to the Hex, I think that expectations set on them. I mean, they got 5 points the first window, which was great. But at the end of the day, can this Canadian team be more competitive than third and fourth in CONCACAF? And I think we already saw that because Herdman was already building this team up and identifying new players all the time. I mean, I think the biggest get of Herdman was Stefano Stacchio when he
Yes.
convinced Stefano Stacchio to join Canada because he was playing for Portugal's U21 team. And currently, right now, if he was eligible for Portugal, I have no doubts in my mind he would have been called into Portugal's team already because he obviously is playing for Porto, and players in the big three in Portugal usually more than ever get a look, even though they have a lot of competition with players in the top five leagues. So I would say that slowly but surely things started to happen. And then once Herdman played with the same team for 20 some games consecutively, starting in March of 2019, starting March of 2021, up until the Gold Cup and then the Hex. That's around 20, 25 games. Once Herdman did that, then he really started to pick the pieces up in his team and try different players in different formations. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people don't really know this, but um, when Herdman took over Canada, to give you an idea, Scott Arfield was the best player on the team. And I mean, look, he is no longer even considered right now. He's not even the team. But guys like Raheem Edwards were still there. Canada was still in a place where, Derek Cornelius was the best center back in that player pool. Right now, he's third. So it's gone to a point where newer players have really come out of the woods. Guys like Scott Kennedy, even though he doesn't have that much protagonism, but he will in the future. Theo Cormanu, for example, right now killing it at Blackpool in the championship. Teju Buchanan, of course, after having that great almost MLS Rookie of the Year season with New England Revolution. So it's been really good in that sense, identifying players and putting it to work in CONCACAF.
Yep. You basically captured three different coaches and the time frames and the change of players and change of squad depth. And I think what John Herdman did, I mean, obviously, he kind of put it together and make sure that fresh blood's flowing in. But without John Herdman, I mean, obviously he has some experience in the female soccer side. But do you think that's that's the turning point when he was given the charge of the men's team?
I think so. Not that I didn't believe in Octavio Zambrano. I think he would have done a fine job. But I just think that Canada, got a lot better with John Herdman. And there were some tough moments, as I mentioned, that 2019 quarterfinal loss to Haiti, which should have never happened. Um, I mean, look at after that game, Marcus Coutinho, responsible for two of those goals, no longer with the team. And Alphonso Davies, which, caused the penalty on that third goal. He's now much, much comfortable in that defensive era. Defensively, sorry. So, you learn from your mistakes. And I think John Herman has done that a lot, which is excellent to see. I think it's been fundamental, not only in player identification, but giving this team a system to play in. You can tell that the team is comfortable playing in different formations. Even during games, you'll start a game where it looks like a 3-5-2 or a 4-3-3, and they'll change to a 4-4-2 within the game, which is obviously shows he's very adaptable as well. And coming into the Hex, John Herman under CONCACAF coaches, you have Greg Berhalter, you have Tata Martino, and even Luis Suarez, who at the end of the day, Costa Rican coach from Colombia, tons of pedigree in South America. You wouldn't really mention that Herman was really in that conversation, but I would say the first sign of like, wow, something's big was that U.S. match 2019 when Canada beats the U.S. for the first time in a very long time at BMO Field, 2-0 in Nations League. That was the kind of the proof in the pudding that, hey, there's something here. It's not just illusion. There is something here. The team is sound, is good. And then once after that, he kind of picked the pieces together. See, what I like about Herdman is that when he picks his players, he's very loyal to his players, which if you look at England, if you look at France, you look at Euros, or you look at World Cups, what you kind of have to do, and it sucks for other players, but what you kind of have to do is that you have to repeat the same 11. You have to, for the same 14, 15 players, you kind of have to be slotted in because you create a lot of chemistry between players. I mean, Canada's back line, starting goalkeeper, even the wingers, you kind of know who to expect. Yeah, maybe Buchanan will start one game, maybe Hoylett will start the other. Maybe if Hutchinson's not available, you'll slot in Piet, or if Johnson's not available, you'll slot in Larea. But other than that, I mean, the team is pretty much set in stone, which helps a lot to build chemistry. And I think if he can do really, really well in Qatar, then it's only going to be the foundation for 2026, which I really believe that in 2026, Canada will be able to even do better because we won't be losing as many players anymore. I mean, 2026, guys like Hutchinson retire, Victoria, maybe Borjan. We'll see. I think Hoylett might probably retire. He's 32 right now. So Canada will lose 3 to 4 players, but then 3 to 4 players out of 25. So Canada will be in really, really good position in 2026.
Yeah, it's great that you kind of touched on that Canadian team is an ensemble of mostly very, very energetic young players, and if nothing major happens, I mean, most of them should be on that future cycle as well. But I'm going back to a little bit on that BMO Field win versus US, specifically that point. I mean, before that, even our neighbors or on the region, I mean, not a lot of people were taking Canada very seriously. Do you think that's the time when people started to notice, okay, there is something? I mean, from opposition's point of view, say for example, USA or Mexico.
Yeah, I think that was the second point. Obviously, the first time it was Canada's first quarterfinal in 2017. That was important. Repeating another quarterfinal in 2019, but after the Haiti game, as I mentioned before, a lot of people lost faith in John Herdman. You lose against a Haitian side that, with all due respect, had a lot of semi-professional players. Yes, a lot of players playing in League Two in France, but there were a lot of players in that team that were playing in the Haitian League. So at the end of the day, there were a lot of questions that were being thrown right now, and a lot of people said to asked each other, "Hey, is John Herdman really the coach?" And he proved it at once that match against the U.S. I'll say about the U.S. I know we're going to talk about them a little bit later, but the U.S. team is really good on paper, but they haven't delivered. And so that match against the U.S. caught the entire region by surprise. And then even after that, I mean, when Canada played against the U.S. again in Orlando in a 4-1 loss, also Nations League, then even some other critics were saying that, hey, maybe that 2-0 game was just
Fluke.
pure luck.
Yeah.
That 4-1 game, really proves that the U.S. is the more dominant side, and then the U.S. really hasn't been able to live up to its full potential. I think everybody knows that.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So, speaking of this particular Canadian team, going into the World Cup after 1986, that's probably the first time in my lifetime that they're on the
And
final
all of
stage.
us,
So yeah, I'm especially excited to see the Canadian flags and the anthem being played in the biggest stage in the world football. But what to expect from this Canadian team? I mean, what should we realistically can expect? Obviously, it's a big celebration itself that we are in the bigger stage, but and we're going there as the number one CONCACAF team from qualifiers.
mm-hmm.
But there is obviously the
Hey,
group.
so here's what I'll say
Yeah,
for sure. So here's what I'll say. I think that Canada, if you look at the groups right now, I mean, Mexico again has to play against Argentina and Poland as well, and obviously the U.S. has England in front of them. I would say that even though that Canada, here's the thing with World Cup draws, because it's interesting. You would think that, as you mentioned, Ronnie, just a couple of seconds ago, you would think that number one in the region means that you get a better seed. But clearly, the U.S. right now, I think, is ranked 12th in the world's FIFA rankings. And I think Mexico's in the 20th, 16th, something like that. So I think it's the FIFA rankings should be changed. I mean, that system, to me, doesn't really do much for you. I mean, especially it's a system that doesn't change a lot. Canada right now is in its best position ever in terms of FIFA rankings as well. I think their highest is in the 40th or whatnot, but I think they should be a lot higher than that, even though because of this first seeding that I'm talking about. Now, what are the expectations for this Canadian team? It's tough to say. Here's what I would say though. What Canada can get most out of the experience, if they can be competitive, and I know it's a very safe answer, but if they can be competitive in all three matches, then to me that is good enough. A lot of people will say, well, if Canada can't score a goal, I agree. If Canada cannot score a goal, that would be heartbreaking. I think they will be, especially against Morocco. You look at Belgium and Croatia; they have defenders who are aging, which I think Canada can really take an advantage of, especially from the speed. I think that Canada, Belgium is looking stronger than ever. Recently, they've had really bad results in September window, if you look at. But they still have a golden generation, which came up very short in the World Cup, the previous World Cup. And I think Croatia might be kind of the side to target. I would say, if I had to guess, one draw and two losses, I think, is the worst case scenario. Best case scenario would be 1-1-1. No, I think it's possible still. If Canada can get within a 1 or 2 goal lead, 2 goal difference in each game, I think that's success. That's what success looks like. If you lose to Belgium 2-0, to me that's fine. If you lose to Croatia 2-0 or 2-1 or 1-0, same for Croatia. Sorry, same for Morocco. Excuse me. I think that's good enough. I think more than just the whole results thing, because if Canada can prove to be competitive again, then you can get a ton of players transferred in January, which I think is something that you want. You're going to be playing against Japan right now in the November window. That's going to be a very good test, because Japan has 15 players in Europe's top 5 leagues, which is unprecedented for an Asian team. I mean, they've really been on the rise, especially from 2018 in Russia. Um, there's a ton of stake here, Ronnie, because at the end of the day, in this previous transfer window, we saw a lot of players transfer. Kyle Larin signed with Bruges. Ike Ukbo made his move to Troyes in France permanent, for example. Corbinu just got himself a loan to Blackpool in the Championship. Um, Brim, who is just back in the second division, but he got himself a move to the first division in Holland. Porto finally retained Stakio. So there were a lot of transfers in this June window, July summer window. Vitoria, the last one, of course, him retaining to play in the first division team in Portugal. But there's a lot of stake here, as I mentioned in January. A lot of players could be moving to bigger clubs. Guys like Samer Kube, if he can have a great World Cup, I think that he will be gone. I think he might play. He might be wanted by one of the big three in Turkey. Maybe even you look at the championship. He had a spell there over there, so maybe he might be back in that kind of team. Someone like Johnston, English passport, for example. Sinclair, even though he's not going to play at this World Cup, Sinclair could definitely be on the move. We could also see someone like Kamal Miller as well, even though I think he probably one more year or so. If Larea can have a big World Cup, he could be on his way back to Nottingham Forest. Or Nottingham Forest could even could even take offers from him and then take a decision on that offer. Kone, I think everyone knows that Kone is leaving as well. So there's tons of things, as I mentioned. There's, I'd say, 4 to 5 players that I think will be moving in this January window, which is exciting.
Very
and
exciting.
I think it all depends on how good Canada does. I think if Canada can do really well, especially the youngsters that I mentioned, they can move abroad, and that's why I was saying 2026 even be better.
Absolutely. Putting points. So, just if someone doesn't actually saw Canada for certain reason in other part of the world, and they want to
Mm-hmm.
see who are the Canadian superstar in terms of in the team. You probably have mentioned a lot of them already, but if I have to identify at least one leader in each line of defense, midfield, and in the attack, obviously we're talking about Alphonso Davies in the team, but still, who would be there in terms of Canadian leaders on the team?
In each line, you said?
Sorry, what was that?
Like in each line, like each position?
Yeah, each defensive line to the, or who would be the leaders on this team, and who would be the players that the people are not actually even heard of, but they might be come up as a big performer for Canadian national team.
For sure. Well, I think Jonathan David's goal scoring record, both league for country and club, is superb. If you look at him right now, he's tied with goals with Neymar in Liga. That is quite outstanding. And if you look at the top goal scorers, David has 22 goals in 34 games for Canada. He's delivered against weaker teams and especially stronger teams. I think David has to be the number one guy. Davies, of course, because at the end of the day, this is going to be Davies' cup of tea. What do I mean by this? Davies has been playing against players that are below his level the entire CONCACAF um, cycle, especially against the U.S. Maybe against the U.S. and Mexico, not so much because you do have some European Champions League type players. But now as Davies is going to be playing against guys of the likes of Kevin De Bruyne. You look at the Croatian players, Luka Modric, who's going to be most likely his last World Cup, and even in Morocco, tons of players, Hakimi. So he'll be playing against players that he's used to playing against, anyways. So he's going to be his cup of tea. Same with Jonathan David, his goal scoring record. I think Laren could surprise a lot of people, even though right now he's not doing too well at Club Brugge. He actually didn't even make the matchday squad the other week, so we'll see with that. But he's always delivered for Canada, top goal scorer in CONCACAF. And I think I mentioned him already. I did, yeah. Stefano Stacchio, the most underrated player. I swear to God, if Canada did not have Stefano Stacchio, the midfield would be not as good as it is. I think without Stefano Stacchio, the team looks completely different. And I think that Stefano Stacchio, personally, even though he doesn't have to move, I think Stacchio is fine at Porto.
Yeah.
But he has top 5 league potential in a top 5 league, top 5 club, excuse me. So I think he could, confidently play for Valencia, Sevilla, one of those clubs, even a Marseille or this kind of team. Like he could definitely play on a fourth, fifth best team in the French league and the Spanish league. I think he could definitely do it. I'm more than confident he could. Right now, he's doing well at Porto. But I think the number one player. I mean, you have David Eustáquio. I think this is going to be David's World Cup. I really do, because I think that at the end of the day, if he scores a lot of goals, then I think he's gonna be signed in January. He's finally gonna leave Lille right now, with no Champions League, and right now he's valued at 40, 50 million. I think if he does a great World Cup, he can be sold for 60 million. I think this is his World Cup without a doubt.
Um, Thank you for that. I personally, I'm a huge Buchanan fan. Not because just he's an exciting player. Obviously, sometime even with the Club Brugge, he's been in top form. It's exciting to see him, uh, in the bigger stage, fighting so well and doing so well. But in terms of has as you say that the Belgian backline and they have a certain way of playing and they're mostly aging as well, and potentially even Croatia, although they look to be in the form of late in the September window. But I was hoping, it's just my wish, that this is one of the group that might be just gets like everyone beats everyone and there's goal difference comes in, and somehow Canada gets into the next round. It would be awesome. But uh, what is your thought about, compared to, as you talked about, Canadian being the top CONCACAF team in the qualifiers, but getting a fairly hard group? And what are the chances that you think of, say, USMNT or Mexican team, and obviously our other rival Costa Rica, going into this World Cup?
I think that Costa Rica, again, it can be a dark horse. They started the qualifying cycle very, very badly. They won 6 of their last 7 games, and that's why they got themselves into that spot, and they beat New Zealand in Doha in that continental playoff. They're looking good right now. Got a lot of momentum. So I'd say Costa Rica definitely not to sleep on, but they're not the team that got to the quarterfinals in 2014. Let's not forget that. It wasn't just Keylor Navas, but it was also other players. Guy like Joel Campbell was in his best form of his life. Currently, he's kind of a downfall, and you don't have that supporting cast anymore. So I would say Costa Rica. Don't expect too much from them, although they are looking good, as I mentioned. Won 6 of the last 7 in that qualifying, and looked okay in the friendlies. Mexico, I think, has the biggest pressure. As we all know, they've made the round of 16 of the last 5 World Cups. There's something called El Quinto Partido, which means the fifth match. Mexico's not been able to play a quarterfinal in its history, and that's something that's really plagued them. They want to play a quarterfinal, and they haven't been able to. And I think there's a lot of criticism right now going on with Mexico, Tata Martino specifically, for a couple of reasons. The main one being Chicharito. He is doing really well in MLS, and he got in a fight with Martino. I think there's something to be said that if Mexico doesn't do well, there's some rumors, going on right now in Mexico, that if Mexico, fires Martino, which is looking likelier by the day, that Chicharito will be brought back into this national team. The other scenario is that Mexico right now is in a position where they've had Martino for 3 years now, and they haven't been able to identify a style of play, which is something that Martino said would introduce. That hasn't happened, and I think that Mexico just itself. I mean, if you look at the media in Mexico, and if you look at Mexico is the 8th best-selling jersey in the world. They have the population of 120 million. So, with that being said, the pressure is just too much. It's too much. Mexico is the fan base that one of the fan bases that travels the most for World Cups. This year, it's going to be 100,000. It's going to be in the top 5, for example. I mean, that's huge. And in Russia, I think they were one of the top as well. So just to give you an example, like Mexico, has that fan pressure, that media pressure, and I think right now they might even bounce out of the group stage. Maybe we'll see, and I think round of 16 is definitely possible. But I mean, if they get out of the round of 16, there's still going to be criticism because again, they have never gone to a quarterfinal, and anything below. Put it this way: round of 16 is like, okay, yeah, you completed expectations. Quarterfinal will be like you over exceeded expectations, and group stage would be no, you completely failed. So that's the thing on Mexico and US. US is interesting because, as I mentioned earlier, on paper, US are much better than should be much better than they are. US has over a much larger player pool than Canada and Mexico combined. If you look at US's player pool, they have 45 players playing in Europe's 10 leagues. That's France, Germany, Spain, England, Turkey, Portugal, Belgium, Holland. So you have a lot of good, really good players to choose from, especially a lot of players with dual nationality. But in the U.S. right now, it's gone to a point where they don't even know the best 11. Berhalter, many, many, many times, especially in that time where there wasn't qualifiers going on, friendlies were going on. He tried out like 50, 60 players, which I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, it made a lot of people wonder, like, hey, like, what's he doing? He should be calling up the same usual Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Stefan, Pulisic. Why is he calling up like this guy from Besiktas with 0 caps, 29 years of age? It doesn't make sense, right? Tyler Boyd. So, that's the thing with the U.S. They have too much talent, and sometimes it's just like the U.S. could field a second or even third team to play in the Gold Cup, and then have a second team to play against in qualifiers, and then even have a first team to play against top teams like England and whatnot. So that's been an issue for the U.S. And I think the fact that the U.S. has a lot of American owners. Sorry, European leagues have a lot of, especially big clubs. They have a lot of
Yes.
American owners, which helps a lot in the whole thing of the transfers. US's FIFA ranking as well helps a lot of these players get visas. And obviously, when you have that kind of help from FIFA to have players get visas to in Europe, that helps a lot, especially the the exposure that MLS gets. I mean, MLS right now, the TV rights, not just within the U.S. but globally, it's gone to a point where you can watch MLS anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world, doesn't matter where you are, you can watch MLS anywhere in the world, and that's a certain value that the U.S. men's national team has benefited from. But I think the U.S. will be out of the group stage. I just don't think that um, they finished okay, but I really believe that look. I mean, they just lost. They just lost in September. They're not really right now. They're not looking good right now. Berhalter has a lot of thinking to do. They tied against Saudi Arabia, 0-0, and they got a tough group. I mean, they lost against Japan. Canada's going to be playing against Japan, so we kind of test them. And I mean, look, Wales, it's a tough opponent. England as well. I think Iran, obviously, they can get 3 points out of there. But at the end of the day, I mean, they played Wales a couple years back and they didn't beat them. And I don't think this American team, excuse me, are better than the American team from 3 years ago.
That is quite a statement because when you see in the paper, I mean, they look great. But yeah, I always thought that with US MNT, it is something to do with the coach and the style of the players. It doesn't really like being compatible with each other's ability, and somehow there is too much confusion on the pitch. But is it okay to say that US potentially out of all this CONCACAF team were having probably the easiest route to go into the round of 16?
The American team,
Yeah.
it's tough because if you look at 2018, the European football teams, national teams, that is, they have gauged a big gap in quality. I mean, from the round of 16, and quarterfinal from above, it was all European teams in Russia 2018, and it's the World Cup. I mean, it's not the European Cup. I mean, they have their own Euros, but you look at that, and obviously Russia 2018 being a World Cup where from the, I think it was quarterfinals, yeah, from the quarterfinals on, all European teams. That makes quite the statement that wow, European teams have really, done something here. They're better than they've even well in that time. Argentina was not good. Brazil was also going through some different stages, and the other teams just cannot compete because European national teams have just they have so much more advantages in terms of budget and whatnot. So I would say that Canada, is a good position, but the U.S. right now, I think even Wales, people don't sleep on Wales. It's not just Gareth Bale and whatnot, but you have to look at the history. Uh, I just can't remember the last time. Actually, do can't remember 2010. We all know what happened. England played against the U.S. Um, Goalkeeper let that horrible goal in, and the U.S. just because the U.S. let that goal, score that goal, they thought, oh, we can compete against England and whatnot. But I would say that the U.S. can challenge Wales, but for me, I just think that Wales is in a better place right now, and they have a lot more players that are starters in their team. A lot of people forget that at the end of the day, you can have as many players as you want playing in top clubs, but if they're not playing, what's the point?
Yeah.
Wales doesn't have a lot of superstars besides Gareth Bale, but what Wales does have is players that are playing in their clubs with consistency. And again, it's not clubs that they're not like you know sexy clubs. They're clubs that maybe in England's mid-table teams specifically, but they're teams that at the end of the day give these players minutes. U.S. right now has struggled for minutes. If you look at Zach Steffen, if you look at Ricardo Pepi, for example, first season in Augsburg, even though he was playing, he was kind of his form wasn't very good. U.S. went through a lot of injuries. The U.S., he had like I think there was a time where the U.S. had 8 or 9 injuries to their main players, so they had to play with a lot of backups. So I think the U.S. right now they still lack a lot of cohesion. If they can beat Wales, they can, but I think Wales right now have a lot more consistency.
Fair enough. So yeah, I really don't think that I have a lot more to ask in terms of the CONCACAF. But tell me one thing, Thomas, that you still cover a lot of university level soccer in Canada, and I mean, obviously MLS is more kind of a high end sort of games, but still you go and see some of the very grassroots level kind of soccer, and you see the development of players. Do you think that this might even more bloom on as Canada just reached on the biggest stage of the national teams competition in the world?
Well, it's interesting because I've been asked by so many international journalists, especially in Latin America. Well, now that you have CPL, are you guys going to be better? Well, I mean, CPL hasn't really participated in this national team call-ups. If CPL existed when Stephen Hart was taking over, completely different story because Stephen Hart had a very difficult task. He had players playing in the third division of Germany, second division of Finland, second or third division of US. Like he had a very very tough time. He had players with no minutes. It used to be called. There was a joke. I mean, there was a joke going around Canadian soccer, unattached FC. And there was also a point where the European players couldn't make it, and they used to have January camps, and it used to be called Camp Poutine because the players that would come, they'd usually be like you know fringe MLS players. I mean, we know how the Whitecaps, the CF Montreal, and Toronto FC like to sign 18, 19-year-olds out of the academy, but we all know how it used to go or even goes right now. Those players will normally get in 3-year period and maybe like 5 caps, and that's it. They're fringe MLS players. So Canada used to be kind of filled with that, and then you kind of started to see a change. Now the CPL is doing great, but right now to crack this Canadian national team is tougher than ever. You mentioned the grassroots. I have commentated U Sports, as you mentioned. Now, how many more Joe Watermans are there? It's tough to say. I would say not many. I think his case is very particular. Can they play in CPL? For sure. Do they have to be given a chance? 100%. That's the other thing people don't understand too, is that Joe Waterman is where he is, a chance to get a World Cup squad because CF Montreal decided to take a chance on him, and not because he didn't have the quality to play in MLS anyways. But CF Montreal were the only team in MLS that really took a chance on him. American teams sign American players because it's an American league. However, I do think that there are other ways that the game is growing. If you look at Herman said this, I think it was a year ago. He said non-linear pathways. There's three. I would categorize this national team into three different pathways. One is European academies, and European academies, you can be thankful. You can be attributed to guys like Jonathan David. He went through a European academy. Um, Theo Corbino, again, developed at a European academy. Um, you know, Players of that sort right now. More players that I can think of. Stefano Stacchio as
Mm-hmm.
well,
Mm-hmm.
developed in Portugal. Scott Kennedy, he went through the European system. So guys like that, Milan Borjan as well. Guys like that, they developed through the European system. Brim as well. But there's other guys that developed through the Canadian MLS teams, and guys like Maxime Crepeau, um, other players like Samer Kube, who had his first steps with the Whitecaps. Now he's currently playing in Turkey. He's one. Those are players that, because of the Canadian MLS teams, they wouldn't be professionals otherwise. I like to think so. But there's another third kind of ring where it's like it come through the MLS Super Draft, the MLS Super Draft through NCAA players, guys like Larea, guys like Johnston, Buchanan. Um, they're all to thank because of the NCAA MLS Super Draft. Sinclair as well came through NCAA. So you really have this kind of three ways where players come from European academies. Some players come from the MLS Super Drafts and get signed to American teams, and some players come through the Canadian MLS teams. Now there's a fourth pathway, which is the CPL. Hasn't proven one so far. Joe Waterman might be the first, because let's not forget, Joe Waterman still hasn't debuted in the Canadian shirt. He still has 0 caps, right? But he could be the first, especially with Daniel Henry's form right now being very, very low as it is. But again, those three pathways, as John Herdman has said, have helped Canada a lot. I can't think of a national team that has that many pathways. If you look at, I think it's pretty straightforward in a lot of countries, right? In a lot of countries, you look at South American teams, there's only one way. I mean, you have to play in your own league before you can go abroad. But with Canada having dual nationality, a lot of players just go to Europe right away. A lot of players go to these states because they're offered full-time scholarships, and then there's the MLS route as well. Um, and again, you have those three MLS teams, Canadian MLS teams, that can really nurture that talent and then give them their first pro chance of maybe even playing in the MLS or going through, as is the case of Ishmael Kone,
Yep.
right? Samuel Piet, too. I mean, he went through the European system, played in Fortuna Düsseldorf, FC Metz, was playing in Spain as well. And now he's back in CF Montreal. But if it wasn't for that European route, he might not be a professional. And it's kind of vice versa with guys like Kone. I mean, it's either the MLS route, the European, or the university route. So CPL is kind of the fourth route. And Canada has a lot of pathways. Again, South America, Europe, it's only one pathway. I mean, if you're not going to play pro, that's it. For an European national team, they're not going to call up a European player playing in MLS. That's just, unless he's like someone like Jovinko or whatnot. Shalini, who just retired, is a legend. Has to be a legend. So it's interesting how Canada is kind of interesting and unique in that way.
Well, thank you for that pretty in-depth kind of scenario that what the pulls are actually pulling it from towards the Canadian national team. Um, just a last question, because you mentioned that you were born in Chile. Do you actually follow the Chilean football at all?
It's tough. It's tough to follow, especially with so much going on in Canadian soccer. I do follow my team from time to time. It's called Universidad Católica, the third most successful club in the country. It's tough, especially when Chilean teams don't do so well at Copa Libertadores when they get eliminated with Brazilian and Argentinian teams, or not even though Argentina or Brazilian, but
Some
uh,
Paraguayan
they
teams too.
they
Yeah.
lose against Paraguayan teams, Ecuadorian
Yeah.
teams. So I try to follow as much as I can, but Chile right now not in a very good place. They got a tough time right now replacing the golden generation, and a lot of the golden generation right now is not doing so well. But nonetheless, thank God I have Canada. Otherwise, it would be very, very, very difficult to deal with just Chilean soccer alone.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you, Thomas. Thank you for your time here and giving us a lot of information regarding Canadian national team and what to expect. And hopefully, we we do see some brilliant times and brilliant moments in Qatar, and hopefully we'll progress through.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ronnie.
And for those who wants to follow Thomas on the social media, I'll put the information in the comment section in the video. Please make sure that you like, share, and comment or question any of the for the future interactions. But yeah, huge thanks to Thomas for helping out and spending some time with us. And yeah, always pleasure listening from you.
Thank you, Ronnie.
On that note, I'm going to wrap up this part and. Yeah, thank you again, Thomas. We'll be back with more episodes very soon.
Perfect.